Okay, welcome to part two of Carrie review. Since this is part two, there will be spoilers. If you want a spoiler free, kind of like 10-minute review, go to part one where I give my rating of it up front, and then you can come back to this one and then see what I thought about the rest of the book. I got Spark Notes pulled out. Since Carrie doesn't have chapters, Spark Notes divides it by section. So right now we are in section 7 according to Spark Notes. And we are getting ready for prom night, or Carrie is. She puts the dress on for the first time on the morning of May 27th in her room. On the morning of prom, Carrie tries on her dress and revealing a new push up bra, which makes her feel both excited and ashamed. Her mother walks in and says that she knew the dress would be red and that everyone will be looking at Carrie's dirty pillows. Carrie points out that every woman has breasts, and her mother says that they should burn the dress in the incinerator. When Carrie quietly refuses, Margaret rakes her nails across her own cheek. Carrie tells her mother that she won't change anything, and Margaret screams and punches herself in the face, raving about Jezebel and the dogs licking up her. That's nasty. I forgot that was. Yeah, I forgot that was in the. It's just she's just so like crude about it. Carrie flexes, which means that she uses her telekinetic powers. The bedroom door open, pushes her mother out, and tells her that she loves her and is sorry, but she will be going to the prom. She's standing her ground. Later that evening, Carrie waits for Tommy, who will be arriving at 7:30 p.m. Her mother has locked herself in the chapel, and Carrie thinks that maybe it's all a joke and it would be safer to just stay home. I don't know if this is kind of like a premonition or is just worries, like, she's just worried in general because of who she is and who she goes to school with. But she ponders but she thinks about her life and how it will be after high school if she just stays with her mother, and she ends up idly, like she's just, offhandedly lifting household objects with her mind. The cuckoo the cuckoo clock pops out of the clock. Oh my god, I just tongue twisted myself. The cuckoo pops out of the clock to announce the time, and it's 7:30. And at 7:33 p.m., Carrie begins to imagine how she would destroy her own house. And that is when Tommy arrives. 3 minutes. So he's relatively on time. For Carrie to have these thoughts, I would probably give it like 10 minutes maybe before you start to get worried, but I get it. She's a high schooler and she's worried, and this is like the first time anything good, it seems, is going on in her life. Carrie begins to imagine how she would destroy. Okay, I already said that. Tommy arrives. She asks him if he likes her, and he tells her that she is beautiful. So again, these are like the context clues that tells me that Carrie isn't really ugly the way that they describe her in the beginning of the book. It's more like she's maturing, and I don't know exactly how long, like from beginning to end, like from the beginning of the book, like the shower scene to prom night. I don't know how close that is in proximity, but maybe it gave her enough time to mature, or since she's wearing a dress, this is the first time anybody is noticing how pretty she actually is. Chris and Billy are in a room above the Cavalier, a tavern outside city limits, where Chris ponders her fiery relationship. It's okay, you can call it that. She thinks that if she had not finally allowed Billy to sleep with her on Monday, this part is pretty fucked up, that he would have forced her. So she basically, this gives you an insight on how much of a piece of shit Billy is. Continuing on, he is the first lover that she has not been able to treat like a marionette. So basically, he it's like this bad boy persona in the negative connotation of it, where, oh, I can't control him, and that is what makes her attractive to it, which is kind of like not the best mentality to have, obviously. But yeah, at the same time, Chris is not the best person, so misery loves company. Who knows? But this is a messy relationship overall. At 7:45 p.m., Chris wonders out loud if this is a bad idea. Billy tells her it's a good idea, and Chris is excited. again, it's like this kind of like spidey sense that people tend to have, like, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this. Well, or it's just straight up being a good person. You're playing a prank and her conscience is coming out saying like, hey, maybe this isn't a good idea, but Billy's conscience is shot to shit, so he convinces Chris to like, hey, let's just go with it anyway. In the school parking lot, Tommy opens the car door for Carrie and tells her not to be nervous. He says that she reminds him of Galatea, which is what I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced, which is a character in Greek mythology to whom no one recognizes when she turns into a beautiful woman. Again, more insight or more kind of like hints as Carrie is, you know, maturing, or maybe like she's just being noticed for being who she is. It's basically your ugly duckling kind of story. In the lobby, they see George Dawson, Frida, Jason, Tina, Blake, and Norma Watson, which they sound like famous people, to be honest. George lurches towards Tommy with his fists up, and Carrie is terrified until she realizes that they're just horsing around. Frida asks Carrie where she got her dress, and she is surprised to learn that Carrie had sewed it herself. They continue talking as they walk to the gym with George and Tommy. When they arrive at school, Billy tells Chris he will let her be the one to pull the string. So everything is like getting set up. Everything is getting ready to have the ball drop, so to speak. Everything's about to go down. On Thursday night, he had gone alone to position the buckets above the chalk outlines on the stage where King and Queen will stand. And again, this part of the plan, it's very, they're high schoolers. So I think I said this in the first one, where this whole plan relies on too many variables that can go wrong, which is kind of what you want if a piece of shit is planning the plan. But still, how the plan formulates feels a little stars aligning, right? Where it almost feels like Final Destination, where things just happen to fall into place. That night, he had thought to himself that it would be all right if Chris were standing in that spot. So he doesn't care. He just wants to be an asshole. Billy. Norma Watson leads Carrie and Tommy to their table and talks in exaggerated tones about how different Carrie looks, almost like she in her way is apologizing or trying to suck up to Carrie because Carrie is actually a nice looking girl. When Carrie is asked about what her secret is, Carrie retorts that she is the secret lover of Don McLean, a popular musician at the time. When Tommy smothers a laugh and uh, Norma's smile slips, Carrie thinks this is what it's like when the joke is on someone else and she likes it. So she's not the butt of a joke, and she's actually cracking jokes, which is, I mean, everything is working according to what Sue, or Susan, because I'm calling her Susan now, to what she thought might happen, where she is coming out of her shell. Meanwhile, Margaret walks slowly through the quiet house and thinks about her grandmother, and her grandmother who also had the devil's. Oh, Margaret thinks about her grandmother. Oh, gotcha. I thought this was her mother for whatever reason. So I'm guessing the telekinetic powers skips a generation, because if it's Margaret's grandmother, nope, that doesn't make sense. It's Margaret's grandmother. Her mother doesn't have it. She doesn't have it. And Carrie has it. So it skips two generations, maybe. But then again, that diminishes my theory or my headcanon that if you have the recessive gene, or it could be that the male had it. No, yeah, if I'm thinking that it's maternal and I'm thinking that Margaret had the recessive gene, but it didn't manifest itself as telekinetic powers, then she ended up having some kind of mental health issue, which is not necessarily the case. I'm guessing if her grandmother was the one that had it, but then it could be that her grandmother had the gene, and then the grandmother had a son, which is Margaret's father, and then Margaret's father passed down a gene to Margaret, and then Margaret passed it down to Carrie. But we don't. I don't know. I don't think it goes into that detail. Back to the Sorry, back to the summary. Shortly after her grandmother's funeral, Margaret remembers seeing Carrie in her crib, laughing as her bottle dangled in thin air. She thinks that Ralph stopped her from killing Carrie then. So I thought Margaret was going to. So this is like the fourth. Okay, so far, let me continue reading. Stopped her from killing Carrie then. She gets a butcher knife from the kitchen and begins to sharpen it. The cuckoo jumps out to announce that it's 8:30 p.m. So, if my math is correct, which it might not be because I might cross over some things from the book and the movie that I've seen, but from what I'm understanding so far is Margaret tried to kill Carrie when she was born, tried to kill Carrie when she was a baby and floating a bottle, tried to kill her when she was like 3 or 4 years old with that neighbor and the bikini like thing with the dirty pillows. And now, later on, we'll see. Remember, we're talking about spoilers here. Tries to kill her when she comes back from prom. Back to the summary. At the dance, Carrie and Tommy admire the decor and the thrones for the king and queen. Carrie says that the thrones are beautiful, and again, Tommy tells her that she is beautiful. At 9 p.m., Tommy goes to get them some punch, and Carrie sees Mrs. Jardin. So, real quick, I'm trying to stick to the books, but I'm just going to interject about the movie here. The thrones for the king and queen were basically just chairs, and I wanted them to be like these big old, like, Game of Thrones kind of thrones, but I get it. And also, we're getting close to where I don't know if Mrs. Jardin is actually secretly a POS, but we'll see. Carrie stares at Mrs. Jardin silently, remembering how she looked the last time her teacher saw her. Then tells Mrs. Jardin that she looks pretty. Mrs. Jardin tells Carrie that she looks beautiful and that what had happened in the past is forgotten. Carrie replies that she cannot forget, but that it is over with. She can't forget, but I'm guessing she is about to forgive. But then everything goes to shit. Anyways, when Tommy returns, she tells him she thinks Mrs. Jardin was trying to apologize. And again, with this whole trying to apologize thing and actually doing it is two different things. And that's one of the things that I feel like is very common. And I'm not exempt from it either. I've had to learn, yes, like, hey, you need to just straight up apologize. And people still need to learn that they need to straight up apologize. And doing something passive aggressively is not, like, it does not count. At 9:15 p.m., Susan, is at home alone listening to records. Sue's period is 1 week late, and this was an oh shit moment. All right. Tragedy is about to strike, and she's going to be dealing with her period being late. She is concerned. Yeah. At almost 9, well, she's concerned about how the night is going. I don't know if she's necessarily concerned about her period being late. At almost 9:30 p.m., Chris and Billy arrive at the school parking lot. Billy tells Chris that when the time comes to pull the rope hard, when the time comes, pull the rope hard and run as soon as the buckets drop because their actions constitute as criminal assault. This dude is just, I don't even know, like he knows POS all POS. On to section 8. In the gym, Vic Mooney, senior class president, announces that voting for king and queen will begin. When Carrie sees her and Tommy's name on the ballot, she asks Tommy if he wants to decline, but he does not. He says all you do is sit there looking like an idiot, and the picture of you looking like an idiot is in the yearbook. He dismisses the idea of false modesty and insists that they vote for themselves. Vic announces a tie between Tommy and Carrie and another couple. So, from my understanding, right, Chris takes the ballots, forges a lot of them, writes Carrie and Tommy's name on there, and puts it in whatever box that they announce or they count the votes from. Instead of just straight up switching the box, which would have made more sense, and have it be a guarantee that Tommy and Carrie win. Although obviously you probably have to vote for other couples to not make it so like obvious. But this is just one of those things where you left it up to chance, right? And now they go down to they have a second vote, right, for only the top two or the two couples that tied, and then Tommy and Carrie end up winning. Chris wonders out loud what is taking so long, and Billy tells her to shut up. Carrie asks Tommy to not vote for them again, but doesn't explain her feeling of dread. So this is almost like a premonition. He votes for them anyway, and she has a premonition of her mother's face at home. Margaret cuts herself or cuts her palm while she is sharpening the knife. And I think the premonition is that I don't know if it was her writing their names on the first ballot or the second ballot, but like a pencil breaks and it cuts her hand. So that might be the premonition. Vic announces that Tommy and Carrie have won by one vote. Someone gives Tommy a scepter and puts a robe over Carrie's shoulders that leads the couple to the stage as the band plays. When the audience applauds, Carrie does not detect any sarcasm in it. Tommy takes her hand and thinks that he loves Sue, but he loves Carrie too. They're both smiling, they have the same light in their eyes, and it is 10:07 p.m. Outside, Chris and Billy hear the band start to play the school song, which is their cue, and they pull the string. Chris is nervous, and when Billy tells her that he won't pull it for her, Chris screams and pulls with all her might. They hear shouts and laughter from inside. At 10:25 p.m., Sue hears the whistle from town hall. So everything that happens in prom is like less than 20 minutes, right? It's like 18 minutes from when they pull or when they're up there in stage, when they pull the string, and when Susan hears the whistle, which is the alarm, like the fire alarm for the whole town. Susan looks out the window and sees the school is on fire. As she rushes outside, she hears an explosion, which I know it sounds like 18 minutes is not that long for everything that happens next, but it's actually very long for like something of that scale. As she rushes outside, she hears an explosion. In an excerpt from a 1980 magazine article titled "We Survived the Black Prom," Norma Watson describes the sight of blood pouring down, the sound of a bucket hitting Tommy Ross on the head, and the awful laughter that followed. She recalls that everyone had been happy for Carrie and to give her her moment, but once everyone started laughing, then no one can stop. Norma sees Carrie's face break before she covers it with her hands and hops off the stage like a big red frog. So this whole face breaking, mind breaking, and all that stuff, that's a lot like anime. Like, so if I feel like whenever when I was reading this, like the one that come to mind was Elfin Lied or something like that, which is a super tragic, like it's like super like depression porn type of anime. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's like a classic or whatever. But the whole term of her face breaks, the telekinesis and it's flexing, it could give like a slice of life anime that turns into a horror anime. So I feel like this book would do numbers if it was animated. So like a big red frog, and she sees Mrs. Jordan hitting the wall as Carrie runs past her. So I'm not 100% sure if it's going to talk about it here in these sections or in this summary, but at one point, I don't know who describes it, either Carrie or somebody else, but Mrs. Jordan is like laughing as she's like covering a laugh to go up to Carrie, and that's when Carrie pushes her. So she really isn't as honest as one might believe, is what I feel. Yeah, so Mrs. Jordan kind of feels a little two-faced to me. Somebody trips Carrie as she runs, but she finally is able to make it out of the gym. Norma describes the lobby doors slamming shut and the ensuing stampede. Before the students reach the doors and try in vain to open them, Norma sees Carrie's smiling face looking back at them through the glass. Only the students who go through the doors, through the fire doors, the emergency escape, are in the back of the gym are able to survive. The sprinklers turn on, and Josie Vrek yells to the band to unplug their instruments, which is kind of like, I would probably say like stay away from the instruments, but I think if they're also high schoolers, I mean, it's also like the 70s, so maybe people don't know fire safety. Norma and Tina see Josie being electrocuted. On their way to the fire doors, they run to the hall, and Norma looks back and sees electric cables writhing in the air like snakes. So, in this part, I'm pretty sure it's because of the movie, or I think the newer movie. I think there's like a 20 something 2014 movie. I don't know when it came out, but the movie with the girl from Kick Ass. I always thought that it was just a pure force, like a shock wave of kinetic energy, like the Force Unleashed is when she like slams people against the wall, which I'm pretty sure what happened in the newer movie from what I can remember. And I'm actually excited to see what the new adaptation for Amazon Prime what they do with this. But really it's just water and electricity. I don't know if that would actually trigger a fire the way it did, because if they were standing in water, because a person bursts into flames. If that's kinetic power in play thing there, then I get it. But I still don't know how that would really cause a fire, but it's a book. On to section 9. For Tommy Ross, age 18, the end came swiftly and mercifully without pain. So before reading this book, and even before watching the movie or anything about Carrie, I didn't know Tommy as a character. And now knowing that Tommy wasn't like pushed away or was part of the kinetic attack or a victim of the kinetic attack, this is just an extra like twist in the knife, so to speak, in the story of Carrie. Because this is pretty much the only accidental tragedy type of death that happens in the book, and it's fucking Chris's fault. Never really. Oh wait, no, we do know what happens to Chris. But if Carrie just straight up runs away and doesn't destroy the town, oh, I would hope, I would hope Chris gets what's actually coming for her. Not that she dies as well, but that, she faces the consequences of her actions, which is killing Tommy. At 11 p.m., Sue takes her mother's car and makes it to the bottom of the hill before the school explodes. The school exploded. Everything, gas, white. Sorry, I just had a little intrusive thought. It's like that sound bite where it's like, oh, POV, skip a you skip a page whenever you're turning pages, and all of a sudden everything goes to shit. Anyways, moving on, her head hits the wheel when she slams on the brakes, but she makes it out of the car before falling down from the blow. Oh, unbeknownst to Sue, Tommy Ross is already dead by this point. Okay, so I think I was listening to this part and I also read this part. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because of the wording, how it's written, or if it's some kind of like colloquially thing. Is that what the word is? Like the way that they talked back then is different than the way they talk now. I was a little confused. I thought the school exploded. She slams on the brakes. She gets out. She tries to run towards the school and it explodes again and it knocks her back. But I guess the explosion, her hitting the brakes, hitting her head, and getting out, and she's knocked over by the blow to her head is okay. That that makes more sense. In an excerpt from his sworn testimony, Thomas Quillen, the town drunk, describes his view from the detention cell at the police station. So this dude, Thomas Quillen, he's in the drunk tank, essentially. He's able to look through a window and he's able to get out, or he just screams through the window. Maybe it'll clarify this right now. At 10:40 p.m. on May 27th, he sees Carrie at the fire hydrant before it explodes and watches Carrie as she walks downtown, grinning like death's head. Okay, so maybe this is everything goes down like from the prison window because it says he cannot explain how, but claims he knew she was thinking about making the town pay. He then looks over and sees the pumps at the gas stations off their hooks just before a man walks by and tosses a lit cigarette. The narrator or the story flashes back to Carrie's point of view when the buckets fall. Carrie sees Tommy's pain or senses Tommy's pain before she registers what had happened and thinks that Margaret was right after all, her mother. Carrie tries to scream as she realizes everyone is laughing at her, and she sees the lying compassion in Miss Disjardin's face as she runs past her. So, is this just in Carrie's head that she believes everybody lied to her and that, like, misery is what made her think that Mrs. Jordan was laughing at her, or was Mrs. Jordan actually laughing at her? Because if Mrs. Jordan was actually laughing at her in that point, after everything that's happened and after what's happened in the locker room at the beginning of the story, fuck her. But if this is just what Carrie is seeing because of what she's experiencing, which is another traumatic event for her, then okay. I mean, I kind of get it. Outside, Carrie calms down and considers going home. But then a rage raises in her and she decides to teach them all a lesson. When she shuts the lobby doors with her mind, the sound of the students' screams is music to her ears. She thinks how funny Josie looks like as as he is being electrocuted. And when Rhonda Simards, some girl named Rhonda, her green dress or green skirt bursts into flames. Carrie heads into town to take care of the fire hydrants, or she like dismantles them so that no one can put out the fire. She's like, nope, get rid of it. Which is a scary thought. Like, I almost don't want to say this because I don't want to give anybody fucking ideas, but like an arsonist, right? What if they go to burn a house, or somebody goes to burn a house down and then they mess with the fire hydrants? Like, like that's a scary thing. Like, is that something that happens out there? Who knows? But surprised I've never heard anything like this in the news where some madman goes to burn something and then tries to like mess with the fire hydrant so that they don't use it. In an expert from his sworn testimony, Sheriff Otis Doyle notes that less than 40 minutes elapsed between the first reports of trouble at the school and the explosion there. At 11:12 p.m., Susan flags him down on his way to town. She asks Sheriff Doyle if Tommy is dead and if they caught Carrie yet. At 11:15 p.m., Vic Mooney, bruised and bleeding, lurches towards Sheriff Doyle and tells him that Carrie pulled all the plugs after they dumped blood on her and Tommy. At 12:10 a.m., which is this midnight, every phone line in town is jammed. I'm assuming because Carrie ripped a bunch of wires off the telephone poles. Carrie is inside a church on Carlin Street, groaning and swaying as she prays at the altar and sends the contents of the church flying. So she's praying. She's in sorrow. This is actually would be a very, very good, like really good visual, which I don't think I have seen yet. I still need to finish the 2002 Carrie movie, TV, film, and the newer one with Chloe, I want to say is her name. Yes, Chloe Grace Moretz. But this is a good visual. She's in the altar. I'm assuming she's in the very front. She's praying, and all of a sudden, like she yells or something, and then everything just goes flying. Receiving no answer to her prayers, she decides to go home to find her mother. And then pretty much at that point, she's like thinking she's going to kill her. Like she's going to go to her mother to kill her. Carrie pauses on the church stairs to let loose the power wires among the townspeople who have begun to wander the streets. In an expert from her sworn testimony, Cora Simard, Rwanda's mother, describes seeing Carrie come out of the church, Cora and Helen's mother, Georgette, are on their way to the school to find their daughters. Sue tells the court she knows Carrie is responsible but cannot explain how. The women walk carefully to avoid the fallen wires, but Georgette takes a misstep and Cora describes the smell of Georgette's burning flesh. This kind of like is ruining it for me. It's burning flesh as sweet and pork like, which it just sounds that just like it's gross. Okay, it's gross. Like I still eat bacon, but because of things like this where they describe human flesh, if unless it's drenched in barbecue or it's bacon, I probably won't pick it. It won't be it's not my first pick anymore. At home, Margaret sits in the dark with her butcher knife. The cuckoo clock falls from the wall and the mechanical bird squawks. Carrie walks in covered in blood and grease. Margaret begins to talk about Ralph, Carrie's father, and says that she should have killed herself after the first time they had intercourse before they were married. He promised not to do it again, and when she had the miscarriage, she felt that the blood washed away that sin. So this is another thing where you can't really put logic to a person who has, some kind of psychosis or whatever her diagnosis is. Who knows, mental health issues. She felt bad, or she felt so much guilt about having premarital sex that she was almost going to kill herself. And then in her twisted mind, she had a miscarriage and she felt that that blood had washed away that sin. If I'm not mistaken, in the book, it says that they got married and that their marriage is sinless. It's not a sin to have sex with your wedded husband. But still, Ralph shouldn't have done what he did. And after weeks of celibacy, Margaret sent Ralph out of the house after he tried to touch her, but later returned home drunk and took her by force. So this is another kind of like projected sorrow, remorse, trauma onto Carrie from Margaret. Carrie begs her mother to stop, but Margaret continues, yelling profanities about how much pleasure the act gave her and that she almost killed herself afterwards. She points out that she also planned to kill Carrie as soon as she was born with the knife she now holds. So, like, this knife is like Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. It's just it keeps coming back. It's used as a story plot point, which I'm it's kind of interesting, right? I'm surprised, or I'm pretty sure you can try to like make a replica and then say, "Oh, this is Margaret's knife." But it's a knife. It's a kitchen knife, so I see why you wouldn't be able to do that. You can kind of do that with Michael Myers' knife, but even that is just a kitchen knife. Carrie says it is not right that she came home to kill her mother only to find her mother waiting to kill her. This is messed up all the way up and down any way you see it. When her mother asks her to pray, Carrie screams for Margaret to help her and falls forward on her knees. Margaret plunges the knife deep into Carrie's shoulder and falls back. I think she just fall back, or does Carrie push her? I don't remember. Carrie stares at her mother and tells her that she is picturing her heart going slower and slower. So she's force choking her, but force choking her heart, which is whoa, like that's a dark side force power for sure. And I'm surprised Darth Vader doesn't do anything like that, or any Sith Lord hasn't done anything like that. Carrie is up there when it comes to Sith. So yes, Carrie is a Sith Lord confirmed. Yes, Carrie staggers out to the backyard down the street. The knife is still in her shoulder. Section 10. It was 11:20 p.m. Oh, okay, so we're going back in time a little bit. It was around 11:20 when they got back to the Cavalier, which is the Roadhouse, or it's like a bar, like a dance hall. Billy rips Chris's shirt and slaps her when she protests, which is again just fucked up things left and right. She tells him it's over. They fight and trade insults. Billy reveals his base nature and violent feelings towards Chris, and they descend into a red, thrashing unconsciousness. So, I'm hesitant to say that, hey, this is a toxic relationship because the way that people say toxic relationships are is just that they're arguing all the time. No, this is nuclear type of, you know, toxic. Or you know what? Yeah, this is pretty toxic. Chris wakes up at 1:20 a.m. as Jackie Talbot pounds Talbot Jackie, which is a guy, pounds on the door. The town is burning, and Jackie realizes that their errand to the Hentley's farm was about Carrie. He panics about having his fingerprints on the bucket, and Billy just tells him to go home. Chris wonders out loud what to do about Carrie, and Billy slaps her again. He tells her that they will go to town and watch the fires, then go home and tell their parents they were out drinking. So, on top of being a piece of shit, he's being a cocky piece of shit. Chris and Billy get into Billy's car and turn on the headlights. This is actually a pretty cool visual that I'm surprised isn't in, well, I don't know about all of them. I've only seen the first one to the end, but I'm surprised it didn't come out in it. Is when they just turn on the car, headlights turn on, and all of a sudden, boom, Carrie is there. As lame as it sounds, this did this got an audible whoa out of me, almost like if it was a jump scare in a book. Chris screams as she sees Carrie standing in the light beams, tottering towards them. Billy floors it in Carrie's direction, and the car spins and slams into the wall of the Cavalier. Gas spills from the busted tank and ignites. Carrie drags herself across the parking lot, thinking how wrong it all went and how much she is hurting, and asking her mother what she should do. After Sue leaves Sheriff Doyle, she stares at the burning sky and knows that Tommy is dead and that Carrie had something to do with it. With a flash, she realizes that Carrie has gone home to kill her mother, and when Sue gets to their house, she sees a trail of Carrie's blood. So in this part, it's almost like she is psychic and she's getting all these flashes. And pretty sure I've said this before, or it's well known. All of Stephen King's work is essentially in the same multiverse, not necessarily the same universe, but it's like all interconnected. Which my predictions for The Shining is that it's some power that some people have, right? So I would guess that Susan is the same as Danny. I would say the kid from The Shining, if that's his name. I haven't seen the movie or read the book. Obviously, I'm going to be reading it next or after Salem's Lot. But yes, I feel like Susan and the kid, if his name is Danny, are similar in that way. In a daze, she follows Carrie's trail 3 miles to the Cavalier, and along the way, she seems to hear Carrie's thoughts. So, this also could be that just Carrie is projecting her telepathic or psychic abilities to the town that they can kind of tap into. Carrie is exhausted, but keeps going because her mother wanted her to be the angel's fury sword or fiery sword. An expert from the Shadow Exploded ponders on the moral implication of isolating the TK gene. Even if it were possible to test for the gene in children, there is no way to remove it. The only way to erase the potential for mass destruction is to kill the person with the power to wreck it. So it's like, hey, should we be testing people for this TK gene? And what happens when somebody has it? Do we control them? Do we go into this whole super like isolated route? Or this is the reason why the X-Men were prosecuted. I don't know much about the X-Men, so I'm probably talking out of my ass, but where is the line? Like, what should you do? Is a big kind of like moral question. Sue sees Carrie in the parking lot of the Cavalier and thinks she is dead. When she observes that Carrie's presence still waxes and wanes in her mind, she realizes Carrie is unconscious. It looks as if Carrie had been trying to turn over to her back, but she passed out. And Susan notes the irony that she can start fires but cannot complete this simple movement. Carrie moans and speaks to Sue with her mind, and surprisingly, Sue is able to respond the same way. So does she have some kind of TK abilities, or this is all Carrie? Carrie thinks of all the dirty tricks. Wait, yeah, Carrie thinks of all the dirty tricks that were played on her, and she wonders if Susan was part of them. She was. She was part of some of them. Sue tells Carrie to look inside her mind, and Carrie sees Susan's emotions, including her love for Tommy, her hatred for Mrs. Jordan, I guess, and her self hatred. But Carrie sees no hatred for her personally, which is surprising because in the very beginning of the book, I think it was Susan. Oh no, Mrs. Jordan. It was the one that said that she looked at Carrie with pity and hatred. I'd have to double check. But it's either Susan or Mrs. Jordan. If it was Susan, it's surprising. If it's Mrs. Jordan, then it kind of confirms the bit where Mrs. Jordan is kind of a two-face. Susan hears Carrie wince in pain and cry for her mother. She tries to pull back so that Carrie can die in private with her mind. She yells at Carrie to let her go, and for a moment she sees a flame disappear down a long black tunnel and realizes she is feeling Carrie die. Carrie's last thought was an apology to her mother. Sue runs away from the horror of it all. And this is it's pretty horrifying because I don't know if it was middle school or high school freshman year. No further than that, but I'm pretty sure middle school. Where I don't know if it was a library or one of those book fairs, and I haven't picked up the book since then. But it's like etched into my mind. It's called Unwound or Unbound, something like that, where they dissect people piece by piece up to their mind, where they're alive the entire time they get dissected for whatever reason. They're prisoners or something, and I just remember being enthralled and just reading it, and it's like my memories. I'm losing my memories. Who am I? What's going on? And then silence. This reminded me of that, and this struck a chord with me big time. Susan runs away from the horror of it all, but when she becomes aware that something is happening to her, she stops in the middle of a field. She lets loose a howling scream as she feels blood flow down her thighs. Now, this horror, this scared uh Susan this scream that Susan lets out, is it for the horrific irony that this all started when Carrie got her period, now she gets her period when it all ends? Or is she screaming because she thought she was pregnant and this is a miscarriage, like her mother, like Carrie's mother? Who's to say? I think I like the irony, the rhyming or po- poetic irony, poetic horror, whatever you want to call it, of it started with Carrie's period and it ends with Susan's period. It sounds weird, but makes sense. Now we are in the last section. It starts with Westover Mercy Hospital report of deceased. The initial page, the initial page of section 11 is a replication of Carrie's death certificate. It notes that she was dead upon arrival at the hospital and lists the time of death at approximately 2 a.m. Susan, I knew her name was Susan, not just Sue, but Susan, is listed as the person who identified the deceased, and the certificate notes that the body was released to the state of Maine. This is one of the biggest departure from the original movie, and I'll get with it in a second. Or you know what? Now that I'm on this train of thought, this is what they changed, right? They changed the whole part where basically the destruction of the town. They don't show much of the destruction of the town. Carrie just walks home and then fights with her mother, and then the whole house comes crumbling down in the movie. And then the end of the movie has like this Friday the 13th type of jump scare, where a hand pops up and grabs Susan's arm, and then she wakes up in the hospital or with her mother because it was a nightmare. Not gonna lie, that jump scare got me. It was really good. It was a pretty good jump scare. But in the book, she's pronounced at the hospital, or uh, she gets a report from the hospital, or a death certificate. She gets a death certificate and is released to the state of Maine. Continuing on, a newswire report from June 5th, 1979 states that there are 409 dead and 49 are still missing in Chamberlain. It refers to an investigation of the Carrie White and the so-called TK phenomena, as well as rumors surrounding her autopsy. I forget what those rumors are. The governor announces that an investigative committee will study this tragedy, which is the Carrie White Committee. A newspaper article from September 7th, 1979 reports that many houses are now for sale in Chamberlain. The town mill is still in operation, but has cut back to one shift due to lack of workers. Kelly's Kelly Fruit Company was destroyed on prom night and will not reopen. There are now 440 people known to be dead, and 67 of those are or were Ewan High School seniors buried in 3 mass ceremonies, which kind of threw me off at first when I read it because I was like, mass graves? But no, mass ceremonies. They had a ceremony for everybody at the same time. Thousands of people attended, and only 52 Ewan senior. That's always that. It always throws me off. You Irwin seniors attended the graduation ceremony at a neighboring high school, and there were no parties afterwards. Yes, because I feel like it'd be pretty morbid. Or I'd be surprised that I was actually surprised that there wasn't parties, because you would think they would try to use something tragic to like I don't know. I'm probably just thinking of one of those scary movies where they were toasting to Wes, but that's just one person that died. This is like 440 people. The reporter concludes that the town looks as if it is waiting to die. Principal Grail basically puts a resignation letter, and then an excerpt from Desjardins says that she would have rather off herself than continue teaching, and expressing regret for neglecting to reach out to Carrie. Everybody's just feeling bad for or guilty for what happened. Everybody's blaming themselves. Everybody thinks things can go different. And yes, just be nice, people. Graffiti on the lot where the White's home stood notes that Carrie is burning for her sins, which is another kind of like irony or poetic irony type of thing, because Carrie or Margaret White and Carrie were known to be super religious. Now, some super religious graffiti is saying that they're burning for their sins. An article in 1981 Scientific Journal notes that politicians seem inclined to dismiss TK or telekinesis as a fluke, or they seem inclined to dismiss it as a fluke, that it's just a one-time occurrence. But there is a 99% possibility of a genetic resurgence, and it's pretty much confirmed later on in just a second. In her autobiography, Susan says that she hopes the books sell well, or the book sells well, so that she can move someplace where nobody knows her. The governor's committee concludes that there is no reason to believe a recurrence is possible. But in 1988, so what? It's like 9 or almost 10 years later, a woman in Tennessee writes a letter to her sister. She writes about her blonde, blue-eyed daughter who is 2 years old and looks like her mama. She recently caught the girl laughing and playing with marbles that moved all by themselves. It scared her, and she recalls her Grammy who could make her rocker go when she wasn't in it. She says she bets her daughter will be a world beater someday. So again, it's not. Wait, no, it's her grandma. So this one, so this is where I got confused, I guess. In this note, it says that the mom is looking at her daughter play with marbles and they're floating in the air, and she remembers that her grandmother did the same thing. Oh, wait, so it does kind of make sense because the person who is writing, we'll call her Norma, right? Because it doesn't have her name here. They probably says her name in the letter, but we'll call her Norma. Norma's grandmother, so grandma, mother, Norma, daughter. It's two. So does TK skip two generations like it did with Carrie? Because it was Margaret, her grandmother. So it was grandmother, mother, Margaret, Carrie. So it skipped two generations. So is that the thing where it skips two generations before it becomes activated? And even then, she seems normal. She doesn't seem like a religious fanatic or anything like that. So that throws my theory out the window that if TK doesn't develop as a form of telekinesis, it develops as a form of a mental sickness. Is that the right term? Illness, mental illness. I don't know, but yeah, that is it. We have reached the end of Carrie. This is the end of part two. I gave my thoughts in the beginning of the first one, my rating actually, which was a 78%, if I'm not mistaken. And I stand by it. And I still stand by Stephen King is a bit of an acquired taste because now I am currently reading Salem's Lot. I have the book somewhere over there in the living room because I bought this pack or three classic novels of Stephen King. So I'm going to treat it as a trilogy, starting with Carrie, going to Salem's Lot, and then reading The Shining before I move on to another series because I want to split these reviews up. Like, I want to, a change of pace every now and then. And since I like reading a decent amount or a decent sized book, I'm essentially treating these three as one book, which I know that doesn't make sense, but it makes sense in my head for the size. So there you have it. I'm going to be reading, or I'm currently reading Salem's Lot. I'm going to be doing a review for that book. There's no spark notes as far as I can tell, and I don't see any chapter by chapter summary that isn't hidden behind a paywall. So I might try to go to the wiki and see how the wiki summarizes it. So I might end up doing just one video or podcast of it. Maybe it'll be a two-parter, maybe it'll be a three. Because I had a kind of like a little semi math in my head where if it's like 300 to 500 pages, I'll split it in half. 500 to 800 pages, I'll split it in threes. And 800 to 1,000 plus, underneath 1,200, I'll split it in fours. But I can tell you right now, Stephen King's Salem's Lot is a bit of a slow burner, and the title throughout the book kind of confused me because it would jump back and forth. And then when I made the connection, I put the book down and I just 1,000 yard stared for a few seconds. But I'll get to that in that next review. But for this one, if anybody's watching, I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Wait, if anybody's watching, I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you in the next one. Wait, is that how? I'm already butchering the ending. I'll see you in the next one.